It's actually quite exciting for me to sit down with Mr. Jha because, like he said, for my show, Let Me Explain, I keep referring to his writings, his books, because in my mind, he is much more than a writer or historian. I don't know how you take to that term, journalist, because he's chronicling something that I think 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the line will serve as an important kind of guide for us to understand how the forces that are kind of shaping our political narratives today came about. I want to start with a very basic question. Why is it important to study all these figures, Godse or Golwalkar, or the others that you've written extensively about?
Yeah, thank you. I'm basically a journalist. I'm not a historian. Of course, after RSS captured power through Modi and BJP in 2014, I shifted my focus to archival journalism, and in that process, many articles as well as books on issues related to history, which are important to understand what is happening in India today, were produced and published. And so I use the same tool as journalist when I explore history and try to substantiate whatever I write. So that is one part of the thing about myself. Now, the history today has become very important. See, Hindu right, like any right-wing force anywhere in the world, has always tried to gain legitimacy in society through a series of lies and myths that they create, propagate. Sometimes those myths and those lies become part of mainstream, get accepted by even non-right-wingers, writers, journalists, researchers, and then it becomes even more problematic because then you cannot remove those lies in order to tell the real story. History is important because only through history you can tell the real story about the people, about the organization who are ruling us, who have captured everything, political power, all the institutions, entire society, I suppose, a significant part of the society and Indian economy. Because if we don't go into history, then what will happen is we will be left with only lies. Only through lies we will be able to understand these people, and then we simply won't be able to understand them. That is why history becomes very important now in the current context. Yeah.
So a lot of people write about the right wing, observation pieces, analysis, and what have you. But what makes your work different is it is almost investigative journalism, right? You go beyond the rhetoric. You talk to many of them who are still part of the system, some of them who've gotten out of it perhaps. How difficult is that process, getting people to open up about what really happens underneath all the, the air cover, so to speak?
See, what has happened is, it is important. If you try to understand pre-Gandhi assassination history of RSS or Hindutva on the basis of literature produced after the assassination, then you will get one kind of picture about their history, about their pre-assassination history. But if you base your understanding on pre-assassination records as well as published items of pre-assassination period, then you will get a completely different picture of that history. And generally so far, people have somehow sometimes skeptically, sometimes not so skeptically, tried to understand that history on the basis of post-assassination literature. I found a lot of contradictions in that understanding. That is why I started visiting archives. That is why I started doing archival journalism. And that is why I tried to understand any part of Hindu right on the basis of contemporary records. Now, this is one part of it. But I like to make people open up. So I like interviewing people, all right? I, force them. I go to any extent, right, as a journalist. And especially when Hindu right, a guy belonging to Hindu right breaks down before me, then I have sadistic pleasure also.
Can I just follow up with one quick workshop sort of a question for those fellow journalists, students here? Maybe a few tips, techniques on how you get them to open up to you, because I'm sure it's not easy. They would have read your work, they know exactly what you want of them, and they'll be guarded. And yet you manage to get them to, reveal things that they wouldn't want to, right?
Well, never believe in anything that these people have written about themselves or say about themselves. Always be skeptical. Never assume anything. At the same time, never assume anything. Try to go through each and every page of any record that you come across, and to try to interview the person till the time he opens up, right? I mean, that often takes a lot of time. I mean, you have to give enough space to that person in order to, so that that person exhausts himself, right, before he starts speaking truth. So I mean, you have to be persistent. I mean, you have to remain there firmly, right? You have to find out. If you are out to get something, you must get it. Until that happens, don't leave the space.
Persistence it is. How has the right wing managed to successfully link Hinduism with nationalism and even patriotism to a large extent? How did this transformation happen, in over the last 3 to 4 decades, perhaps, slowly?
Well, a lot of factors are there. Of course, lies, as I said, and myths are important tools, important weapons in the arsenals of right-wing pro-RSS writers. Sometimes, and of course, later they started using religious institutions and religious leaders for political mobilization of Hindus on the basis of religious symbols and public rituals. And you have entire history when Golwalkar formed VHP. The idea was to mobilize Hindus, but he didn't want to do that under the banner of Jansangh because he was afraid of the government that time. Nehru had just died, and he had to live a very kind of restrained life under Nehru, especially after he came out of jail and ban was lifted in 1949. So he was very careful. I mean, he didn't want to create any serious problem for Jansangh. That is why he formed VHP. Objective was same: capture political power by using religious symbols. But it was not working. It started working much later, right? It started working only when Ram Temple issue was taken up, and sadhus looked at this particular issue in religious terms. I mean, for them, it was like Lord Ram was to be liberated in Ayodhya, Babri Masjid was to be removed and a temple was to be constructed, so it became part of their religious quest. Now this religious quest got merged with political quest of RSS, right? So often we see this kind of merging happening, at different level in different places, but there is a kind of undercurrent also, a kind of pushback also. Because you see, Hindutva is basically political manifestation of Brahmanism, right? So only a small section of Indians, and you can call them Brahminists, are naturally inclined to them, Hindutva, RSS, etc. For the majority, they are like alien bodies, viruses. And what do viruses do? They cause disease, they kill. And that is what they are doing. Yeah? So they are the kind of Hinduism that they are promoting, the kind of Hinduism they have succeeded to a great extent capturing, is not the Avarn part of Hinduism, it is Savarn part of Hinduism. That is why you will see the use of Savarn religious symbols. Ram becomes important, but not Salhes or Dina Bhadri. All right? Dina Bhadri, for your information, I tell you, there is a caste called, scheduled caste called Musahar in North India. They worship Dina Bhadri, two brothers. Salhes is the god of another scheduled caste in North India called Dome. All right. You don't find these gods in the kind of Hinduism they talk about, right? So there is a kind of tussle, and they know this. They know this. That is why they use various means to create chaos in the Hindu space, focusing more and more on attempt to create a space in which Muslims could be treated as second-class citizens, so that the second-class citizens within Hinduism could not think about themselves. Yeah.
So they create a common enemy, an outsider, to unite, various castes and subcastes within Hinduism. But how has RSS, because what you described is it is still exclusionary in nature, right? But how has it now become mainstream to a large extent? Because even in 2018, I remember I was in Nagpur when Pranab Mukherjee was called to preside over one of those annual functions of RSS. Even then, there was still questions raised on whether will he go, what will he actually say, what sort of a message will he choose to send from their, stage. Today, those questions are not asked as much anymore. It's almost taken for granted that RSS is mainstream. How did that transformation happen? And I think it happened in the last 5 to 7 years, not even 10 years, I'd say.
I don't think so. It is a long history. And the history, and that history has got contribution not just from pro-RSS writers, but also from some of the very well-known researchers and writers and historians. One thing that after assassination, after the ban was lifted in 1949, and these people, when Golwalkar was released from jail, one thing that these people didn't want people to discuss was the Nazi influence on their ideology. Because then it becomes very difficult to defend their position, right? So Golwalkar said, initially he remained quiet, everybody remained quiet, and but at one stage, in 1963, one rationalist based in Bangalore, P. Kodanda Rao, he somehow found a few pages from that book, We or Our Nation Who Defined, of Golwalkar, which he had written in 1939, and He wrote to him. Golwalkar didn't give any reply, didn't even acknowledge. Then he wrote to Nehru, he wrote to Lal Bahadur Shastri, who was Home Minister. And Golwalkar got panicked. He just said in one of the events in Mumbai that it is not my book, I'm not its author. It is an abridged translation of Marathi book written by elder brother of V.D. Savarkar, Baba Rao Savarkar or Ganesh Savarkar. And that book was called Rashtra Mimamsa. That book was published in 1934. Now, since then, these people have tried to, I'm just giving you one example how the things have moved in their direction. Since then, these people, Golwalkar didn't utter a word on this after that. Just once he said this, and then his followers started disassociating RSS and Golwalkar from that book. Now, any journalist, any researcher had just to do one thing: find Rashtra Mimamsa, compare the two books. That's it, right? But what happens? Ramchand Guha writes a book, Makers of Modern India. So many, he has written biographical profiles as well as views of some of the important figures of contemporary India. Golwalkar is one of them. He doesn't say a word about we or our nation who defined in the life history that he gives in that chapter. And he gives excerpts from his book, basically collection of his speeches, etc., which was published in 1966, Bunch of Thoughts. So he gives excerpts from that, as if we never happened in the life of Golwalkar. Another good writer, Jyotirmay Sharma, he wrote a book, The Terrifying Vision, on Golwalkar. In the very preface, he says that this book was not written by Golwalkar, it was written by Baba Rao Savarkar. That this was the lie which he was carrying, the lie which was created by RSS. Now, if you look at the ideological texts of RSS, you'll find three texts. One, the 1923 book of Savarkar, Hindutva. 1939 book of Golwalkar, We or Our Nation Who Defined. And 1966 book, collection of speeches, etc., of Golwalkar, Bunch of Thoughts. Hindutva and Bunch of Thoughts give you analysis of past and present. But We or Our Nation Who Defined is the only book that gives you the ideological blueprint which we see being implemented in India in last 10 years. So when pro-RSS writers say this, it is very easy to contradict. You can say that well. But when people like Ramchand Guha and Jyotirmay Sharma write this thing, then it becomes very problematic. The myth becomes very rigid, right? So all sort of people have contributed to this entire process, and of course, opposition's failure. In political terms, the opposition's failure to provide enough space to OBCs, Dalits, etc., has also contributed, in creating a ground in which RSS could operate in that space, right? So a lot of things are happening together. It is not something that happened in last 4, 5, or 10 years. It has been happening. For example, when these books came, I suppose towards the end of the first decade of this century, the two books I've just referred to, right? And that was despite the fact that we or our nationhood defined had already become controversial in Parliament when Vajpayee, in 99, I suppose, a debate on trust motion was on, and somebody raised this issue. It became a big news. All newspapers carried it. And it's still, when this kind of thing happens, then it becomes very problematic. Yeah.
I want to pick on the point where you said the opposition has not given space to Dalits and OBCs, but that is political. Also, ideologically, how much has the center and the left contributed to the growth of the right wing today?
Well, this is really a very difficult question. Very good question, of course. Well, see, till Gandhi assassination, we see that leftist and centrist forces, political forces, were very much aware of the kind of threat that Hindu right was posing. But after assassination, there was a backlash. RSS was banned. All these people were sent to jail, and it seemed as if they vanished. In first general election, they performed very badly. Like all three parties, the three Hindu parties, Jan Sangh, Hindu Mahasabha, Ramraj Parshad, they fought together, and they couldn't perform well. The Communist Party was the opposition party at the time, the main opposition party. So I think that in that process, because the uppermost on the mind of political leadership was reconstruction of India. India had just got independence. So perhaps they thought that this problem is over. And people started getting involved in the reconstruction process, in integration, in creating a new society. The entire nationhood was taking shape, and so everybody from different sectors, historians, journalists, politicians, all these people started getting involved in that process. And then we see a long period, although Nehru remained very alert, but we see that this process continued till about, I suppose, mid-70s. And after that, changes started taking place. Before that, a section of Congress, of course, was quite sympathetic to Patel, for example. In the wake of independence, we see that Patel is not looking at RSS in the manner Nehru was looking at, right? And well, I don't know the exact reason. That requires a complete research, a solid research. But that was a fact. And Patel, being the most powerful man in Congress organization, so we see that for some time, Hindu traditionalists in the Congress trying to draw strength from Hindu communalists outside Congress, right? And this process continued when uh, syndicate Congress was formed when Indira Gandhi became Prime Minister. The presidential election of V.V. Giri. And finally, the rest is history. But then this process continued. Later, and this is my personal belief, I mean, of course, many people may not like it, right? This very theory of, Congress has always remained a kind of enigma for the left. Left could never explain Congress. And the entire history of left is their attempt to explain history, right? But the moment all the communist parties started using this theory of equidistance, that then started creating problem. I mean, the focus from Hindu right, because if you look at the archives, I mean, in 1947, towards the end of it, Communist Party is having a meeting in Calcutta, and PCOC is Secretary General. PCOC, People's Ace was the magazine of weekly magazine of Communist Party at the time, and we see in the archive that P.C. Joshi is giving a call to all communists and socialists to unite with Nehru in order to defeat Hindu right as well as Patel. Yeah? So this was the position that time, but later when this theory came, this theory of equidistance, then it started becoming problematic. And I'm not saying that Congress also did forced communists actually to go to that extent, but then this equidistance often led them to go towards even strengthen a section of communists, try to even strengthen the hands of Jayaprakash Narayan, who said, if RSS is fascist, then I'm also a fascist. Now, this kind of deviation, this kind of, I won't say deviation is not perhaps the right word,
ambiguity perhaps?
Perhaps ambiguity, that has always created a lot of problem in politics. Even today we see this happening, when many people think that, Bhagavad is benevolent, whereas RSS is not. When Bhagavad says that, don't try to see Shivlinga in every temple.
Underneath every mosque.
In every mosque. And the RSS guys do this on the ground, So they attack one after another mosque. So this often leads to confusion. Many secular formations often think that perhaps, of leaders, not formations, leaders often think that, RS Bhagavad may become a savior. Yeah.
You mentioned how the left has not been able to define the Congress. I think the Congress has never been able to define Congress. That's one of the problems, isn't it? In fact, one of the senior Congress leaders I was talking to a few months ago, defined the party as a supermarket. We have something for everybody. But therein lies the problem, isn't it? And that has greatly contributed to the growth of RSS in the right. And like you mentioned, the difference of approach between, say, Patel and Nehru, backed by Gandhi till a certain time, also allowed the RSS at the time to grow in strength, which later kind of manifested into what it became.
Yes. And you're 100% right. And that period. See, what happens is that when you have two very big events happening nearby, assassination of Gandhi and independence, a distance of 5 months, then researchers often develop this tendency to jump from one event to another, and a shadow zone is created in terms of research. But this shadow zone, these 5 months are very crucial to understand what you were saying. Uh, you know, it is very clear. I mean, Nehru, for example, on 4th of September 1947, riots erupted in Delhi. Basically, attacks on Muslims began in Delhi. Delhi being the capital, the nerve center. Gandhi was not there. Gandhi was in Calcutta. Nehru was Prime Minister, but Patel Home Minister. Delhi administration was under Patel's ministry. So a kind of extreme helplessness is quite visible if you go through the archival records of the time. Helplessness of Nehru. Whereas Patel, I don't think Patel was communal. Yeah? But Patel is quite comfortable with all that was happening. Like RSS, he was also looking at Muslims as fifth columnists, as a threat to the state, to the newly formed state. Nehru was doing his best, but then he couldn't have gone beyond a point because he was also a Democrat. And then Gandhi comes to Delhi on 9th of September. And Gandhi understands everything. It is pretty obvious. Gandhi understands everything, and Gandhi starts working at several levels. Number one, he starts meeting all the leaders, including Golwalkar. He meets Golwalkar on 12th of September and then addresses Shakha on 15th or 16th of September. Yeah, just about a week after he came to Delhi. And other leaders also, all kind of formation. That was one level. The another level was he started visiting, refugee camps, because refugee camps were the places where, because of whatever had happened with these refugees, RSS was being able to exploit that anger, And the third level was, the tussle, the ongoing tussle between, the Cold War kind of tussle between Nehru and Patel. So in November 1947, for example, AICC session is organized in Delhi, and you clearly see that Gandhi is throwing his entire weight behind Nehru without saying a word against Patel. But it becomes clear that Gandhi is with Nehru, not with Patel. Right? Now, on these three fronts, he works constantly. And it was then that we see Nehru becoming more assertive. And Patel taking backseat for some time, and RSS preferring to lie low, right? For example, and during the entire stretch, while Gandhi is operating at three levels, he's constantly saying publicly that his stay in Delhi was temporary, that he was going to Punjab, because that was another flashpoint. And we see in Delhi police archives reports saying that RSS guys have been asked not to do anything till the time Gandhi goes, because, Gandhi could have done anything, So they wanted Gandhi to leave before they could do or organize kind of extermination which they were planning, right? So Gandhi's presence in Delhi, in a way, restrained Patel, but until Gandhi comes to Delhi and becomes very active, Patel was definitely providing, knowingly or unknowingly, directly or indirectly, a kind of solid help to RSS. And that, as you said, that differing position inside the Congress survived thereafter, led to a split in 1969 or 1960, I suppose, I'm forgetting. But continued even after that, right? And for some time, since 1980 definitely, even that part of Congress which used to be against Hindu right started having a tacit understanding with RSS. So much so that it frustrated Atal Bihari Vajpayee after 1980 elections and forced him to say that Indira Gandhi is playing Hindu politics, Hindu card. Yeah? Yeah.
I'm told there are questions from members of the audience, so I'll ask two last questions. I want to talk about Godse and how he has been made a more acceptable figure today than he was perhaps a few decades ago. And the way RSS functions, right, where there is no formal membership, you cannot prove when somebody was a member, when he stopped being one, makes it easier for them to associate and disassociate, their sympathizers just as easily. So tell us how Godse's importance and impact changed, say, in the 1970s and 80s vis-a-vis today.
Why 70s and 80s?
Any period you'd like.
Okay, so yes, it is true that they don't maintain any register, membership register, but that doesn't mean that they don't have documents, right? After the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, Nagpur headquarters of RSS was raided, documents were seized, and those documents will tell you that Godse lied in the court when he said he left RSS and joined Hindu Mahasabha. Right? Because even after joining Hindu Mahasabha, he was taking part in meetings and documents are there. And those documents were seized from the very headquarters of the RSS. So, yes, they don't maintain membership register, but the documents are there. And, Gopal Godse, for example, the younger brother of Nathuram Godse, who was also convicted in Gandhi assassination, he kept saying all his life that boss, he never left. All four brothers were in the RSS. And that he said this because these people were very nervous. RSS guys were very nervous as Savarkar was. And so to save them, he said this, right? So there is no doubt. Even he himself says in his interrogation statement that even after he joined Hindu Mahasabha, he kept working for the RSS, right? So that part is something that that is established now. Now, what has happened is, I could say, has always had a pre-existing constituency in the RSS. And once RSS captured power in Delhi, once Hindu right started occupying mainstream, the hatred which existed on the fringe started getting mainstreamed in the form of Godse. Now Godse is becoming the icon. And even the attack on Gandhi by RSS guys or by people associated with Hindu right tells you that the Gandhiism, the very ideas of Gandhi are anathema to these people. And so on the one hand, they are mainstreaming Godse. They're attacking Gandhi, right? So it's an attempt to completely change the imagination of our history that we have in our mind,
And my last question is, some of the organizations that you've mentioned in your book, Shadow Armies, have now become more and more mainstream, right? Sanatan Samstha, for example, after, of course, they're still not, convicted in the Gauri Lankesh murder, or even the Hindu Vahini. You've written a piece for the Caravan later on. Bajrang Dal is now slightly middle because there are so many more on the fringe. So how do you view that change in our society? Do you agree that they are now far more acceptable than they were before? And what they stand for, their ideology as such, and the methods too?
Yeah, so, see, these people understand that division of labor is very, they understand, in a manner that communists have failed to understand, right? And that is because RSS itself started as fringe organization of Hindu Mahasabha. Right? And once assassination happens, once ban is lifted, once they are forced to re-strategize their planning, they go back to their roots, So they, again, for example, when BAN was still there, ABVP was formed, and ABVP started working, started mobilizing students as well as non-students. Initially, it was also mobilizing non-students. All the RSS guys, because RSS banner was removed, so ABVP banner came out. And thereafter, we see one after another series of... Now, some organizations came out not officially. They were formed not officially by the RSS, but by pracharaks or by RSS guys helping certain people to form that organization. Sanatan Samstha is one of them. Of course, if you stand, they will back off. They filed a case against me, and they lost. And I'm sure that if these people, whether the case of Gauri Lankesh or Pansare or Kalburgi, Dabholkar, if they persist, then there is no way these people can escape, right? So I don't really think that there is any difference. It's kind of continuum. There are certain things certain dirty things that organizations like RSS and BJP would not like to do themselves. For that, they need different banners.
It's like people. Outsourcing.
No, not outsourcing. Just different banner is used. People are same, right? So you have also, you do one thing. Go to the meetings in any place. Go to the meetings of different outfits of RSS. The banner will be different, but you will find almost same set of people there, except for leaders. So it's like, it's like Hydra. At the leadership level, there is distinction, but body is same, right?
We'll open up for questions.
First, just a pointer to today's Hindu, the editorial page. As for the first time, a long article by a very obviously senior member of the CPM as to why the left failed. And they quote Jyoti Basu saying it was a historic opportunity when he should have become Prime Minister, and the left did not. Obviously, the people they are referring to, they are criticizing, names are not there, but in Kerala you can understand it very well who they are. I just wanted to point to that article. It's a very interesting, very important article. The question I have to you is, how is the mobilization of intellectuals? I don't mean, for me, soft Hindutva people like Ashish Nandi and they were even now in some sense. But leave Desma aside. Through the Vivekananda International Foundation, they managed to mobilize very influential sections of our foreign service through the Vivekananda International Foundation. Was that something that existed long back? What is its connections to the RSS? And how is it managing to actually neutralize, I would say, intellectuals so they don't become critical of the right? They've never been anti-left or anything. So I'd like to know a little bit from you, from your research.
Yeah.
How is that mobilization happening?
Yeah. Well, Vivekananda Foundation, I've not studied Vivekananda Foundation closely, but I do know that Vivekananda Foundation, ever since its formation, sometimes around 2007, 2008, has been, collecting all sorts of bureaucrats, intelligence, senior intelligence guys, military guys, up to their retirement, and giving them fellowship, involving them in different kind of activities. Perhaps Rahul is better person to explain that, no? Okay. So, but yes, we do see certain mysterious things happening in this country. A lot of things. I mean, many people believe that Vivekananda Foundation is controlling the deep state in the country. We do know that after Modi became Prime Minister, the first thing that he did was to appoint Nipin Mishra as Principal Secretary, PMO, through an ordinance, right? And perhaps this fellow, NSA, Doval, who was the second guy. Generally, these things do not happen this way. Government is formed, ministries are formed, all these things are settled. Then PMO thinks of such officials, right? And through consultation, earlier also, even Vajpayee government followed that norm. But here we don't see that norm being followed, right? RSS has been, like, for example, I know that RSS has always been fascinated by, conspiracy theories, and that often led them towards foreign intelligence groups. J. Kurran Jr., for example, who wrote a book in 1951, the first comprehensive book on RSS. J. A. Kurran Jr. He was an American. Later, in early 1960s, one CIA operative, very much active in India, defected, went to Soviet Union, wrote his experiences in a Russian journal, And in that, he writes that Quran was the most significant CIA operative in India. And that he was sent by CIA to study in India, and he produced a paper, right? And then, if you read the preface of that book, you'll find that Golwalkar is giving complete access to Quran, and Quran was very grateful for that. John D. Smith is also talking about what happened in 1966 when RSS was the key mobilizer, when sadhus attacked Parliament in Delhi on the issue of cow protection. And he's saying, and of course, in that process, a section of protesters, they were not just sadhus. I mean, sadhus were most visible, but then others were also there from Hindu right. A section went to a Congress president's place, who was considered anti-US, and attacked his home. Now, John D. Smith is saying that these people did so at the behest of CIA. I don't know what is the truth, right? But in 1967, New York Times published an article. In the beginning of 1957, there was a general election. And around middle of 1967, this article was published in New York Times, in which the reporter says that news item says that, Indian government is investigating the funding of Hindu right parties like Jan Sangh and Swatantra Party by CIA. Now, these two things became big issues in Parliament. So if you go through the newspapers of that time, you'll find the kind of debate that was happening around these two issues in Parliament, right? So, now coming back to the present time, given this background, I won't be surprised if one day I get to know that Vivekananda Foundation, yeah, I think you're right.
So I came across a very interesting phrase recently, is that a lie runs halfway across the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. So why do you think, why do you think the average North Indian is a lot more susceptible to such lies that have been spread by the right wing? I mean, of course, I'm sure Indians all over are sort of vulnerable to this sort of a thing. But North Indians in particular, like case in point, a state like Uttarakhand, we see that, there's a lot of radicalization that has, happened in recent years. So why do you think such a thing happens?
So many things are there, so many reasons are there. I mean, there's no one specific reason. And number one, yes, religion blurs your vision, and then it becomes very easy for communalists to grab your attention. In Uttarakhand, this often happens, because all the entire, a significant part of Uttarakhand's economy is based on religious tourism, right? And people are generally very religious there. I mean, I often go there, and I feel that. But that is just one reason. Another reason, of course, is, poverty brutalizes you, right? If you're poor, it becomes very easy for communalists to, throw something towards you, give you a false sense of empowerment. What is Panna Pramukh after all, right? Several other factors can be listed here. Some I may remember just now, some I may not remember just now. But it is also not true that And of course, the influence of Brahminism, yes, that is very important. I mean, certainly we see, I mean, that is very interesting. If you look at the shift that has happened in North India after Mandal politics, once Mandal politics became a powerful force in those states, we see that upper caste, a significant section of upper caste left Congress, shifted towards BJP. Yeah. So that, I suppose, provided, because earlier it used to be called Brahmin Baniya Party, right? But now it is not just Brahmin Baniya Party, right? Another factor is, like, for example, Mayawati is seen as leader of, or Mayawati's party is seen as party of one section of Dalit, Jata, and Muslims. Mulayam and his party are seen as representing one section of OBC and Muslims. Now, other OBCs, other Dalits, non-Jata Dalits, non-Yadav OBCs, now they are open field for the BJP. Very easily you can tap it, right? But I don't really agree with you that this is happening just in North. Now, this problem has become pan-India problem. You are no longer secure anymore, you know. I must tell you this. It is happening in your state also.
So I wanted to ask about, when we talk about, say, fascism right now, a lot of times, even mainstream critics of Modi, say Dhruv Rathi, hail Vajpayee as a relatively liberal leader. So I wanted to know, how do you think
that was Vajpayee at 10 paved way or set the cornerstone, or did it in any way give an indication that 10 years later, or sooner or later, the
fascism led by the Hindu right is going to come in?
Fascism is already there, very much there. See, what is fascism? Fascism has three major components. One, complete assumption of power by subjugating institutions which have been created to protect mass democracy. Two, violent exclusion of minorities, in this case mainly Muslims. And three, glorification of war, relish for war. Now, I don't think there is any scope for a debate insofar as first two components are concerned. We have all seen how all the institutions have been subverted, taken over, made to work as part of Hindutva. Media, election commission, judiciary, ED, CBI. You name it and you will get the same kind of feeling about it. We also know how a national discourse has been sought to be created to treat Muslims as the other, as anti-national. They have been subjected to violent attacks. The state, which is supposed to act against such lynch mobs, is trying to create a climate of impunity for them. Right? Third component, glorification of war, becomes visible when Modi ji is faced with Pakistan, but it becomes invisible when, China comes into the picture. So 2.5 on the scale of 3, right? Regarding Vajpayee, see, it happens, Hindu right or any majoritarian politics will always lead to fascism, always, in any country, right? But it will grow gradually before it takes over completely. I consider Vajpayee government as an advanced stays on that process as compared to Janata Party government of late 1970s, which was an advanced stage as compared to SVD formations in certain states in 60s, right? So through all these stages, we have now 2.5 out of 3.
Thank you very much. It's been an engaging conversation, and only because we are out of time, we'll have to let this go. Do you think we can sneak in one more question? No? Okay, they're very, very strict with it. But feel free if Mr. Jha is willing to kind of indulge us. Thank you for being such a great audience. And I had a few dozen more questions, but obviously we'll have to leave that for another day. Thank you, Mr. Jha.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Yeah.